today's lesson is called Rivers and Mountains. All right, we're going to locate our settings for the past few stories. I want you to point out the Atlantic Ocean to me. Over here, what about the Appalachian Mountains? Over here, Mississippi River. Over here, Rocky Mountains. Over here, Louisiana Purchase. Yep, between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains, so all this land right there. What about the Missouri River? Exactly, connects to St. Louis, and it goes west toward the Rocky Mountains. What about the Pacific Ocean? Yep. Where do you think Lewis and Clark are going to be on the map after today's read aloud? I guess we'll find out, won't we? What tasks have Lewis and Clark accomplished so far? They made friends with the Native Americans, right? The Yankton Sioux, the Teton Sioux, the Mandans, the Hidatses. They encountered and made notes about prairie dogs, pronghorn antelope, bison, red cedar trees, grizzly bears, other plants and animals. And they sent some members of the group back east to take samples to President Jefferson. Why did Lewis and Clark decide to bring Sacagawea on the expedition with them? Yeah, to be a translator and a guide. What is a translator? What does a translator do? They're somebody who changes words from one language into another language so that even if two people speak different languages, the translator can help those two people communicate. In today's read aloud, Lewis and Clark discover that they may not be able to accomplish one of their three tasks. Listen carefully to find out why one task was impossible to accomplish. The Corps of Discovery had now been on their journey for over a year. Can you imagine traveling and being away from your home for a year? A whole year? The explorers were very good friends with one another and had learned to depend on each other. One day, John Shields and George Shannon went ahead of the others in a pirogue. Pirogue. I still don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but that's okay. John Shields was the blacksmith, and he knew his way around outdoors. George Shannon was smart and friendly. Shields and Shannon paddled up the river, talking over the exciting events that had gone through so far. Which events do you think they might have been talking about? Well, Private Shannon said, no one can complain that it has been dull. Dull means boring, so he's saying that no one can say that their expedition has been boring because it hasn't been boring at all. No sooner were those words out of his mouth than the tip of their pirogue came around a bend in the river, and they saw a sight that caused them to stop paddling for a moment. Up ahead, the Missouri River split into two wide rivers. One of the two rivers was the Missouri, and the other was not. It was impossible to tell which one was the Missouri River. Which river is the Missouri? Shannon asked. The Missouri River is the one the captains think can carry us farther west. I don't know, Shields replied, and I don't think the captains will know either. We've passed the part of the river our Native American friends told us about, and none of us have seen this part of the country before. Soon the other boats arrived. Going ashore, Lewis and Clark walked ahead and inspected the two rivers. Clark said, if we take the wrong river, it may turn too cold for us to travel by the time we are ready to start from here again. All right, so this is their path so far. They have gone from St. Louis all the way up the Missouri River All right, that's where their path is right now. So that's where they are right now. Native Americans told them that the Missouri River ended in the Rocky Mountains. Lewis and Clark knew that they would have to travel by land instead of water to cross the mountains. Because they wouldn't be able to cross the mountains on a river, that meant there was no all-water route to the Pacific. So, which one of these three tasks will Lewis and Clark not be able to accomplish? They won't be able to find an all-water route to the Pacific Ocean. But why? Because there isn't one. An all-water route to the Pacific Ocean doesn't exist. We need to find the Shoshone people up ahead so we can buy horses from them. They agreed. So remember, Sacagawea is a Shoshone. But first, they would have to continue along the Missouri River to the Rocky Mountains. Lewis suggested, the last Native Americans we talked to said there was a huge waterfall up ahead on the Missouri River. So a waterfall is a place where a river falls down from a high point, okay? We need to find that waterfall. Take some men along the South Fork. Clark and I will try the North. A fork is not like what you eat dinner with, but we're talking about a fork like where the river splits into two rivers. That's called a fork. So you might say there's a fork in the road or a fork in the river, and that just means that it goes from one into two. If one of us finds it, that person will know he is on the correct river. We'll meet back here in a few days to see which group has found the waterfall. Who do you guys think is going to find the waterfall, Lewis or Clark? Unfortunately, when they met up after a few days, neither group had found the waterfall. Lewis had another idea. He decided to try looking for the waterfall by land rather than following one of the two rivers. Do you see the waterfall? Okay. Lewis and his men walked for 2 days before they heard what Lewis later described as the agreeable sound of falling water. Following the sound, they came not just to one waterfall, but a whole series of great waterfalls. This was it. They could now figure out which of the two rivers was the Missouri River. Lewis sent a man back for the rest of the party. When Clark and the rest arrived at the great waterfalls, however, they found Lewis and his men burying the keelboat and some of their supplies for the trip back. It's too heavy, Lewis explained. We need to carry the boats around the waterfalls in order to continue up the Missouri. Finally, after 11 days of hard work, they left the great waterfalls behind. It was a difficult journey. The river was becoming harder to follow as it narrowed and filled with rocks. On the other hand, Sacagawea was closer to the area where she had lived with the Shoshone. She was now able to guide the Corps of Discovery better because she started to recognize the land where she had lived as a child. The more places she recognized, the more confidently she guided them. That means Sacagawea became more certain of which way to go as she got closer to the Shoshone lands where she used to live. In August of 1805, Lewis told Clark, "I will take 3 men ahead on foot, instead of following this winding river. If we find the Shoshone, we'll return with horses. We can use the horses to cross the mountains. Then we can look for the other river we think flows down from the mountains all the way to the Pacific Ocean." A few days later, Lewis and his men were crossing a meadow when they saw a Shoshone horseman up ahead. Unfortunately, when he saw Lewis and his men, the Shoshone horseman turned and rode away. The 4 men kept looking for the Shoshone. A few days later, they reached the Rocky Mountains, which, since the Louisiana Purchase, formed the western edge of the United States. The next afternoon, they came upon an old Shoshone woman gathering wood for a fire. Smiling, Lewis said in English, "We are friends." She did not know English, but she understood when Lewis smiled that he was friendly. She led the 4 travelers to her village and introduced Lewis to the chief. The Shoshone had plenty of horses, but the Shoshone chief explained with sign language that the Shoshone did not have much food to share. Remember, sign language is a way of communicating by using your hands, okay? 2 days later, Clark and the rest of the expedition arrived with Sacagawea. Now, Sacagawea could translate the chief's words. When Sacagawea translated, she turned the chief's words into the Shoshone language, in the Shoshone language, into English so that Lewis and Clark could understand what the chief said. Sacagawea joined Lewis, Clark, and the chief in his cabin. It was dark. The only light was from the fire. With her help, the chief told the captains that his people did not know the way to the ocean, but that a river did run down to it, and that another tribe, the Nez Perce, could lead the party to the river. It might be Nez Perce. As she translated this, Sacagawea suddenly cried out. In the shadows of the chief's home, she had not seen his face clearly. Now, as he turned more toward the light, she recognized him. The chief was Sacagawea's brother. She threw her arms around him and, in a rush of words, explained who she was. What a joyful surprise this was for everyone. Sacagawea and her brother had not seen each other for many years. In all the Shoshone lands, Lewis had stumbled into the village of Sacagawea's brother. Now the chief said, "My sister, I will help you and your friends get all the horses, supplies, and guides you will need in order to complete your journey." All right, guys, that's the end of the story, so it's question time. How did Lewis and Clark cross the Rocky Mountains? By boat or by foot? By foot. Which task did Lewis and Clark discover they were not going to be able to accomplish? They weren't going to be able to find an all-water route. Sorry, the cat just knocked stuff off the table. They were not going to be able to find an all-water route directly to the Pacific Ocean. Do you remember why? Because there was no all-water route to the Pacific. What was Sacagawea's job once the Corps of Discovery reached the Shoshone? She was a translator. All right. Who was the Shoshone chief? Sacagawea's brother was the Shoshone chief. Describe how the Shoshone acted toward the explorers. Were they friendly or were they mean? The Shoshone were friendly, and they gave them supplies, horses, and guides to help them. Where did Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery still want to travel to? Yeah, the Pacific Ocean. All right, word work. In the read aloud you heard Private Shannon say, "No one could complain that the trip had been dull." I want you to say the word dull with me. Whisper it, mass voice it, monster voice it, however. Dull. Dull. Dull means boring. I'm going to say a sentence with using the word dull. I had already seen this movie, so I found it very dull to watch again. Have you ever experienced a situation that you thought was dull? What's something that you would describe to be dull? I want you to use the word dull in your sentence. What's the word we've been talking about? Dull. Dull means boring, okay? I'm going to name a few activities. If you think the activity I name would be dull, I want you to say, "That would be dull." If you think the activity I name would not be dull, or if you think that it would be exciting, I want you to say, "That would not be dull." So this is an opinion question, which means different people find different things exciting or dull. So remember, everyone might have a different answer. Your answers might not be the same as mine. Swimming in a pool. To me, that would not be dull. Sitting with nothing to do. To me, that would be dull. Waiting in line. To me, that would be dull. What about swinging on the playground? To me, that would not be dull. What about standing still? To me, that would be dull. What about listening to a story? To me, that would not be dull. I love stories. What about taking a long car trip? To me, that would be dull. All right, guys. I hope that this story was not dull to you. I'll see you next time. Check out your assignment, okay, guys? Bye.